Hello, welcome back to Repurpose Yourself. Today I want to talk about breaking the mold, the one you built your past career on. For many of us who have spent decades building a career in the public sector, private companies, it may be difficult to imagine a vocation that is different from the one you had dedicated yourself to in the past. But like many of you who are over 50, I found myself in a position where I had to end a career. In my case, it was in academia, and I was not ready to consider myself retired. So I decided to think about what happens after that career as my next chapter. It sounded a little more adventurous than being put out to pasture. As I was closing my affairs out with the university I worked for 20 years, I found myself thinking about what this next chapter might look like. Should I start a consulting company? Or maybe should I apply for a grant to extend the mentoring academy I had started years back into a business? I tried both with less than inspiring results. The LLC I opened for a consulting business did not get a single query over the course of a year despite all the marketing I did. And the NSF grant that a colleague and I put together got rejected. So the Mentoring Academy was not going to be a business either. And during this whole time, I was researching other ideas of what I could repurpose myself into after this academic career, and I realized something. I was trying to fit my future self into the old mold that I had built the academic career on, and that one was over. So the ideas I was coming up with were looking more like a continuation of a career rather than career switching. And this is what makes repurposing yourself sometimes difficult. We're always drawn to look for things that are similar to what we did in the past because that's what we're good at and that's what we're comfortable with. So what did breaking the mold look like for me? The more distance time put between me and my roles in academia, the more I started turning to an old passion, baking and cooking. Just for fun, I started a YouTube channel where I would show the many delicious things my mom told me how to cook. And it turned out to do okay. I did a few demonstrations of my baked goods with local businesses, and people really enjoyed them. I started getting questions like, do you sell online? Do you sell locally? And that drove my mind into that direction where I began to think more carefully about, well, what could this possibly look like? So I started to do some research. I did license my domestic kitchen. I opened an LLC for my bakery, and the orders started rolling in. But the switch from a professor of economics to a bakery owner was not easy, emotionally at least. I had to literally and figuratively put away my professor robes and put on an apron. I did struggle with the thought that this new line of business would be somehow wasting my potential as an academic leader. But the way I eventually ended that struggle was with one realization. The new you in your next chapter is not beholden to the expectations of your past career. You are now at the helm. You are your own boss, and you get to decide how far and how fast you want to sail into that next chapter. Having my own bakery had always been a dream, but understandably, I never had the time or the headspace to take that idea seriously because, well, I had a career to manage. But now I was free to begin building this dream. I was also keenly aware that when I am preparing baked goods, I'm in a state of flow. And that brings me joy. It also brings me joy when people enjoy the pastries and baked goods I make. But to be honest, I would be happy to break even most of the time because starting a micro bakery to get rich is something said nobody ever. So if you're someone who finds themselves in the limbo between a past career and your next chapter, perhaps you too might have a hobby you can monetize or a dream that is radically different from the training your resume indicates. I know quite a few people who have done that. My husband's cousin was an engineer for many years, took early retirement because he loved fishing, and now he is a fishing guide. My neighbor down the street was an airline pilot for decades, and when he retired from the airline industry, he licensed himself as a real estate broker, and now he's living the dream. There are many possibilities, but the key here is that if you're going to be your own boss in your next chapter, it is important to identify something that you are passionate about, that you enjoy, because without that passion and joy, you will never reach the full potential of what your next chapter could be. You may need to learn new things or make investments to make that new business work, but at the end of the day, the pride you feel is going to be what drives you forward. So what might the next chapter look like for you? I'd love it if you can share in the comments. Thank you all for watching. See you on the next one.